My family, the professions across the board are in medicine, law, and business. So I always considered that I'd either be a doctor or be a physical therapist or start my own business. I grew up planning my future early on, and those things changed. The plans did indeed change, and I wanted to go into something creative. My family, the professions across the board are in medicine, law, and business. So I always considered that I'd either be a doctor or be a physical therapist or start my own business. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where higher education was a very much like an option and expectation. So I grew up planning my future early on, and those things changed. The plans did indeed change. In high school, I got a really bad head injury, which kind of reframed what I was capable of as far as academics go. I actually accepted and attended my freshman year at the University of Utah. I lived on campus at the Lassonde Entrepreneurial Institute, and it was a great opportunity, but I was struggling with a lot of mental health challenges at the time, and also I felt a little bit lost in my life direction and also my sense of self, and I felt a little bit lost in the shuffle of the University of Utah. I was in the business school at the time, and so the emphasis of being really well put together and perfect all the time, I took that to an extreme. I started realizing that I had an eating disorder, which was contributing to the other challenges I was experiencing, just all, in between these 2 years. I was in 24-hour care for my eating disorder and other health complications as a result of that. I knew I wanted to go back to school and complete my undergraduate education. I knew that I didn't want to continue in business, and I wanted to go into something creative, and I was looking for a place where I could feel more support from faculty and more sense of community. So as I was working to change neural pathways of positive thinking and creating more resilience, the curiosity that I had about Utah Valley University grew, and the more I learned, the more I realized that it was the place for me. The things that stood out to me were the culture, gritty and green, that we have of resilience and celebrating non-traditional students. I needed to consider my limitations as far as learning and turnaround time and reading goes in the classroom. And so that's why I initially started going into business, but it wasn't enlivening for me in a fulfilling passion way. And so I decided to look into graphic design because as a kid I did art all the time, and my grandmother was an oil painter, and so I'd sit in her kitchen and just watch her paint. I really wanted to get involved with the outdoor adventure program, and I consider myself a very enthusiastic but very novice adventurer. And so I remember walking into their office a few weeks before school started after I'd moved down here and just saying, hey, I'd love to learn about how to get involved here. And 3 people came up and were like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I said, I'm not the most knowledgeable. They're like, well, you're in the right place. While serving as a trip leader in the Outdoor Adventure Center, my knowledge of just basic safety and preparation in the outdoors increased tenfold. I was able to learn how to lead climb safely, and I was able to work at the project for a couple years, the climbing wall, and I just made really good friends who I still am in contact with. And then also just from a mindset perspective, I thought of myself as capable, and rather than seeing obstacles as stopping points, I learned to be more creative with my thinking and work around obstacles that we face, because roadblocks and potholes in the road of life are inevitable. And that really started at the Outdoor Adventure Center at UVU, and then it grew as I had experiences in UVUSA. I had experiences within the School of the Arts and the graphic design program. This project started from a Google Docs note that I wrote to myself one day when I had a slow shift at the bank. The story was inspired by my process of healing from an eating disorder. In the process of treating an eating disorder, they treat it very similarly to a Alcoholics Anonymous or 12-step program because the behaviors are similar to addiction. And so within that process, learning accountability and how my behaviors had impacted my family were a crucial part of that. And within that, each of my family members wrote letters of impact, meaning how my eating disorder had impacted their lives. And in one of those letters, my younger sister, she wrote something to the extent of, when I looked in the mirror at myself the way you did, it was painful and I stopped. And that was a big wake-up call for me because I was passing down a behavior that was threatening my life to my younger sister, who I love dearly, and also just recognizing the fact that the actions, even towards oneself, like how we treat ourselves, is more obvious than people notice. As I was beginning to heal from my eating disorder and attending Utah Valley University, I decided to take this text of the book and create a final project around it. So that's when I did my first illustrations, was in my 2D design class, my very first semester at UVU. The project was still really rough. The illustrations were kind of rushed, as any final project would be, but it definitely was an idea and a story that I couldn't shake out of my head. The book I wrote during my undergrad at UVU is titled What She Sees, A Story Investigating Body Image. And the story follows a young girl and a magic mirror and how their relationship changes throughout her life. The E2I program has been incredible, and this book wouldn't be here if it were not for them. I learned about the program the fall semester of my senior year, and I was sitting in my honors thesis class where we were preparing our thesis ideas to write in the spring. Kate McPherson, who is the director of the honors program at UVU, invited Jeremiah Harrison, who is in the leadership within the E2I program, to come and speak to us. And what he talked about was the E2I initiative, which is an acronym for the Excellence and Innovation Initiative at UVU. One thing that's really interesting about the E2I program is it enables current students to serve as almost like a board of directors within the students' project. So I was considered the leader in my project. I was like the CEO, but then I worked with other students that specialized in social media marketing and English literature to edit the book and also develop a marketing plan. That was really helpful for me because I had blind spots in those areas, and then that was supplemented as I worked with my team of students. As much as I'd love to give myself credit for this book and this idea, it was really and truly just a story that needs to be told, because especially in the state of Utah, we struggle so much with negative body image and disordered eating, both in female male populations, especially like LGBTQ plus populations as well. My experience recovering from an eating disorder motivated me both to continue my recovery, but also try to save like young versions of myself from starting those patterns. We as Utahns smile through the pain and we say everything's fine, but there are issues in our state that are taking lives, and I'm really tired of eating disorders squashing the spirits of those that we need. My hope is that this book would be put in the hands of a young child and they could sit with their parents and say, this is what I'm feeling, and rather than hiding that shame and having it develop into a chronic health condition, that they can address it earlier on and then continue to thrive in the future that they have ahead of them.